All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well and teach well. And peace and blessings to the elect of Israel out there that's pushing this word in all truth and sincerity. All right, this lesson is going to be about, something that happened, today. Um, you have the first and I don't know if it's the first, but it's the only so-called black person in NASCAR racing right now. Um, and today they found a noose in his garage where his team is. Um, and this was right after the elimination of the Confederate flag in NASCAR or on NASCAR like campuses such as Talladega and all the other racetracks. And Talladega being the biggest one, is one of the more well-known ones. But yeah, that's what happened. And Stephen A. Smith, in this, he was speaking about it, his reaction to it, and it was actually surprising that Jake is waking up to the fact that these stories are used to manipulate people. All right, it's to stir up emotions and dictate a thought. All right, instead of stepping back, thinking logically, but I'm gonna I'm gonna let him say it. So I can further expound on it and bring out scriptures. Uh, the only problem that I had with it is that he's speaking from a black, so-called black standpoint, and not of an Israelite standpoint, right? Because calling yourself black only further divides Israel, right? Because you have to understand that Israelites were scattered amongst all nations, and the social construct of black and white was a social construct to divide Israel. All right, because if you're an Israelite and if you call yourself anything other than an Israelite, then you're ignorant. All right, but I'm gonna let this play out and expound on it.
Sensational job of addressing mass incarceration in the United States of America. And one of the things they highlighted is that under the Nixon administration, where you're literally talking about, white folks that are hippies and you associate them with marijuana and you associate black folks with crack cocaine. And as a result, that will ultimately galvanize folks in your favor because they'd be scared to death and you'd be hearing words like law and order ad nauseum. That was in the 60s, for crying out loud. We're in 2020 and we're here.
Yeah, and it is actually before then, right? It's just Esau got wiser in making that separation between white and black. He used certain stereotypes to further separate people. Um, and he was speaking on a Netflix series. I think it was called something 13 or 13 something. I'll put the link in the description to this video so you can go back and watch it, Lord willing. But yeah, that's just a further systematic, quote unquote, systematic racism. All right. But yeah, the whole integration thing was another systematic racism to keep so-called blacks suppressed, because when you do your research and you go into what Jake was doing when they were segregated, when I say Jake, I'm referring to the tribes, and not just the Negroes, but when Jake was segregated, they had their own banking systems. Right, but when they were integrated, it dispersed, the so-called Negroes or the so-called blacks or the tribes, the Israelites, into the working force under the white supremacists, aka Esau, Edom. All right, because before then, before integration, Jake were they were doing their own things. They had their own banking system. The what you see on Wall Street right now was actually made up by was actually an invention of so-called blacks during segregation. All right, so Jake was better off on their own. All right, and if you wanted further research, during the Civil War time, um, when um, when Abraham Lincoln emancipated the slaves, that was just a because there's an industrial boom happening, right? Because when at first Abraham Lincoln didn't want to free the slaves, all right? He wanted to, he didn't have a problem with slavery, all right? But since the industrial boom was happening, they needed more workers in the workforce in factories, all right, to make steel to compete with, the other countries that where the industrial boom started happening, all right, and so there's no longer a need for slavery to exist like that. So uh, when you go into the word emancipate, I'll go into it right now. Emancipate. Yeah, it's a verb. The point is down here. It means set free from. I'll start at the top. Set free from control. Put a son out of paternal authority. Declare someone free. Give up one's authority over. Um, Out, away, deliver, transfer, or sell. All right, ownership. So this is the point, really. Transfer or sell. So what happened is they free, or you can even use this definition too, because they were set free from the control of plantation owners, and then they became under the authority. They were transferred under authority from plantation owners to the Union. All right, because they were used as soldiers during the Civil War, first off, and then second off, when they were officially emancipated or whatever, Juneteenth happened, because they weren't all free. Abraham Lincoln understood that he had to gradually do it, but once they were all officially emancipated, they were still they were just transferred from the authority of plantation owners to the Union, and under the Union authority, they were used in the industrial boom. All right. Same thing happens when the Jim Crow law era happened. They were segregated, separate but equal. All right, but when they were integrated, they were dispersed among the workforce. All right, same shit, different air freshener. Same shit, different time period. All right. And I'll start going into the scriptures now, because Micah 2:10, arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest, because it is polluted, it shall destroy you, even with a sword of destruction. So as long as you're trying to get into be equal or integrate with Esau, that's just furthering your destruction. All right, you're not gonna have rest in this place. All right, the Israelites, according to the Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, all right, the curses that's put upon us, those curses are put upon us because, we went off, all right? And the more you're trying to integrate with and live amongst these Edomites and even the other nations, Ammon, Moab, Japheth, Ham, so on and so forth, Elam, Ishmael, that's just going to further your destruction, all right? It shall destroy you even with a sword destruction, all right? So how do you arise and depart? You arise and depart mentally, all right? Let's see. I'll say the truth shall set you free. Let's get it. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. This one has two precepts. This is Hosea 4:6. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, because thou hast rejected knowledge. I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest to me, seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy power, or of thy God. I will also forget thy children. And that's just a summary of Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter. All right, because you don't want to hearken unto the law, statutes, and commandments and the promises that the Most High made with Israel. The Most High is going to punish you. He's going to put you at the bottom of these heathen. All right, so you're going to have to work for these heathen. But when you come into the law, statutes, and commandments of the Heavenly Father, you have the understanding, and that's what makes you free. All right, it's because this is John 8:32, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. All right, because when you lack knowledge, all right, that makes you more prone to act on your emotions. All right, whenever there's ignorance, there's an enhance of relying on your emotions. All right, and Esau knows this. That's why he creates all these different narratives and false information to keep the people docile and ignorant and in control. All right, and he explains this. This is why I was really shocked at Stephen David, his reaction to this, because he was really calm and collected, and he just brought out information. But I'm gonna keep playing this.
Hearing the same thing now. You just have to open your eyes. You have to pay attention to the parallels. You have to pay attention to the correspondence that's taking place right before your very eyes. Throughout our history, we have had people that have been adroit at laying low, in controlling the narrative, manipulating the narrative, switching things to their favor, all in an effort to maintain or to retain power. It's the kind of thing that has been taking place, and usually they've been incredibly skilled at remaining in the dark and saying it's them, it's not us, it's them, it's not us. Well, guess what? Things are coming to light more and more in this day and age. I find that a cause for celebration, not a cause, to be saddened by anything. I find these to be incredibly beautiful times, as difficult as it may be. The fact that our nation appears to be becoming more enlightened than ever before, and ultimately as a result we're coming together, I find that to be a huge plus, not a minus. And if the ignorance has to showcase itself, and if the ignorant has to showcase themselves in order for this to happen, coming out of the dark, to me that's a cause for celebration.
Yeah, and that's beautifully said. Even though, like I said earlier, it's from a so-called black standpoint and not an Israelite standpoint, that point still holds true to Israel, all right? And it's prophesied, with knowledge shall be increased. Let's get King James Version, Daniel 12:4. But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. All right, and we live in the information age. Everything is well documented because everybody has smartphones and can record something with a click of the button and a few swipes. People can look up facts. On the it's information at the tip of your fingers. As long as you're smart enough to type out a question to Google, you'll find a bunch of different resources. But most of all, it's the Most High's truth coming out. All right, the knowledge of the Most High is coming out. And it's also said the shall wax worse. Yeah, this is 2 Timothy 3:13. The evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived, but continue thou in the things which thou hast learned and hast been assured of, knowing of whom thou hast learned them. All right, because Esau's being exposed. People are waking up to his tactics, his lies, his narratives, his false narratives. All right, and people are not being manipulated by what Esau is doing here. All right, because like he said, that if the ignorant have to showcase themselves, then let them be ignorant. All right, because just as you have ignorant people supporting the Black Lives Matter movement, because that is an ignorant movement. All right, because you're saying Black Lives Matter when and protesting against police brutality when the number one cause for black deaths is their own people. All right, and it's by the ignorant people. All right, the 2/3. All right, what the scriptures call 2/3. All right, just like you have that, you also have I'll say you have ignorant racists, so-called racists amongst so-called white people, and you have educated racists. And the educated racists are the ones that are more efficient, that are behind these closed scenes, stirring up this narrative to divide the ignorant people against themselves. Because a lot of times, the I'll say the ignorant so-called white people that are perceived as racist just need to be educated, because I think a lot of them are Israelites, right? But they've been brought up a certain way through propaganda, through history books too. I'm a so-called white person from the South, but I'm an Israelite though. I woke up to the knowledge that I'm an Israelite, and I put off that vibration of calling myself white or even a redneck. All right, because that culture will take the Confederate flag and say this is a symbolism for Southern pride. But if you do your research, you'll find out that that flag was used to symbolize the Confederate States, and what they stood for was states' rights, and that big states' rights was owning slaves. All right, and that you become educated, and you put off the fact that you want to associate with that. All right, just like when you do even more research, you don't want to associate with the American ideology, right? Because it leads to nothing but death. All right, it keeps people ignorant. All right, because you wake up to the truth that you're an Israelite, and you want to abide by the standard of the Most High Scriptures. All right, instead of whatever vain philosophies that are pushed throughout America. All right. I'll say this too. The biggest or I'll say the smallest minority is the individual, and that's why in Babylon all these different philosophies are pushed. All right, so heavily, is because it creates a huge victim mentality. They'll say you can be anything you want. All right, and it's to distract you from the one true way and keep everybody divided. So you can be a Muslim, you can be all these different things, and it'll be you divided against your neighbor automatically because y'all disagree on one thing. You can agree on everything else. If y'all have disagreements on one thing, then that sets you at variance with your neighbor. All right. But let's see. I'll keep playing this out because I think there's more to it. But that is kind of the main thing. Is yeah. I'll just because this is kind of running on. But I'm gonna wrap it up. The main thing is Esau. I'll get this scripture. Esau knows that the heart is deceitful above all things. Alright, this is Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 9. It says, "The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it?" Alright, because, and that word heart in the Hebrew is la'ab, which means mind. Right, because you have two sections, constantly warring at itself inside your mind. You have, your impulse reaction, what the scriptures refer as, your flesh. You have your fleshly desires, such as like lust, greed, and that's what your heart is desperately wicked. And then you also have, uh, logic and reasoning, all right? And that's where you fill your logic and reasoning with certain history and with scriptures, wise sayings, and that's how you battle those fleshly carnal desires. And Esau knows this, so he tries to um, take away logic and reasoning so that you'll make impulse reactions. Right? That's why, like I knew when they were taking the Confederate flag outside of NASCAR. I knew that it was going to stir up emotions amongst, these people that fly the Confederate flag proudly, and that there was going to be some type of retaliation, and this is what it is. And it's just to stir up emotions and keep keep milking the people, man. Um, and they said they even said uh, the sales for the Confederate flag um, went up. All right, but Lord willing, I hope this video was edifying. Um, and till next time, Shalom.